Every cell in our body is like an engine. And like the engine in a car, for example, each cell requires fuel to run and also produces waste byproducts that must be eliminated. The circulatory system delivers the fuel that cells require, including oxygen provided by the respiratory system and nutrients provided by the digestive system. The circulatory system also removes cellular waste byproducts, including carbon dioxide, which is expelled from the body by the respiratory system, and waste byproducts dissolved in water, which are filtered and eliminated by the urinary system. Eliminating soluble waste is not the only function of the urinary system. It is also one of the most important organ systems involved in maintaining the proper composition of our blood. The urinary system is responsible for regulating blood volume and blood pressure, regulating the concentration of sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, and other ions in the bloodstream, and stabilizing the pH balance of the blood. If any one of these regulatory functions were to fail, the result would quickly be fatal. The urinary system consists of the kidneys, the ureters, the urinary bladder, and the urethra. The most important and complex organs in this system are the kidneys. Purplish brown in color, the kidneys are about the size of a human fist and shaped like, well, kidney beans. The beans were named after the kidneys, not the other way around. The kidneys are located on each side of the spinal column, behind the abdominal cavity wall, just above the waistline. They are protected by the lower rib cage and cushioned by a heavy layer of fat and connective tissue that helps to maintain their normal locations in relation to the surrounding tissues. The right kidney is slightly lower than the left kidney to provide space for the liver. A thick fibrous covering called the renal capsule covers each kidney. Inside, each kidney consists of a cortex and a medulla. The cortex contains microscopic structures called nephrons, where most of the kidney's work is done and urine production begins. A healthy kidney possesses approximately 1 million nephrons. The medulla contains 6 to 18 triangle-shaped structures called renal pyramids. Each tip of these pyramids, called a papilla or nipple, projects inward and discharges urine into a cup-shaped drain called the minor calyx. The minor calyces merge, forming the major calyx, which in turn merges into the renal pelvis. The renal pelvis of each kidney connects to a ureter. Cellular waste byproducts are soluble, that is, dissolve in water. And when they are eliminated, a certain amount of water is also eliminated. Our kidneys work as a filter to preserve as much of our body's water volume as possible. If they didn't, or couldn't, we would die of severe dehydration. Healthy kidneys filter all the blood in our body every 30 minutes. They filter and remove approximately 1.5 liters of urine every 24 hours. This would fill about 2.5 bathtubs in a year's time. Previously mentioned, urine production begins in the nephrons. A nephron consists of a bulb called Bowman's capsule, filled with a cluster of capillaries called the glomerulus, and a long twisting tube called the renal tubule. Blood flows from the renal artery into the glomerulus. Here, blood pressure forces much of the blood plasma, the fluid portion of the blood, through the cell walls and into Bowman's capsule. This is called absorption and is the first of 3 steps involved in the process of filtration, or filtering of the blood. If the filtering surface in every nephron in just one of our kidneys were smoothed out and stitched together, it would equal approximately 6 square meters, the size of a sail on an 18-foot sailboat. One kidney can absorb 125 milliliters of fluid per minute, or 20% of all the fluid delivered via the renal arteries. This fluid is called filtrate, and in one day, the glomeruli produce about 180 liters of it. This is 70 times the total blood plasma volume in our bodies. If the nephron only absorbed fluid, our body would soon be in trouble. We would obviously lose far too much water and other materials that the body needs. This is what occurs in a disease called diabetes insipidus, which can cause death by dehydration. During the next step of filtration, called reabsorption, the filtrate passes from Bowman's capsule into the renal tubule. Here, 99% of the filtrate is reabsorbed back into the capillaries surrounding the tubule and returned to the bloodstream. Driven by complex chemical and hormonal processes, reabsorption allows needed water and nutritional substances to be maintained at a useful level in the bloodstream while removing waste, excess water, and other substances. In the final step, called secretion, any solutes remaining in the capillaries that were not filtered out originally are secreted into what is left of the filtrate. The 1% of the filtrate that remains is called urine. Roughly 96% of our urine is water. The remaining 4% includes sodium, potassium, and chloride ions, as well as high concentrations of the waste byproducts urea, creatinine, ammonia, and uric acid. The yellow color of urine is due to bile pigment, a substance that is secreted in the liver to digest fats and excreted by the kidneys. Urine passes from the renal tubules into larger collecting ducts and then into the minor calyx and through the renal pelvis into the ureters, which carry it from the kidneys onto the urinary bladder. The ureters are tubes about 20 to 25 centimeters in length that connect the kidneys to the bladder. The inner walls of the ureters are lined with smooth muscle, and moving waves of contraction, called peristalsis, force the urine towards the bladder. Small amounts of urine are emptied into the bladder from the ureters about every 10 to 15 seconds. Valves where the ureters empty into the bladder keep the urine from moving back into the ureters. The bladder is the body's urine holding tank. It occupies a slightly different position in the male and female body. It is a hollow organ lined with smooth muscle called the detrusor muscle, which is very elastic. It can normally hold around 500 milliliters of urine, or about a pint. When filled with between 200 and 300 milliliters of urine, nerves in the bladder wall send impulses to the cerebral cortex of the brain, signaling that it is time to empty the bladder. Although able to accommodate a much larger amount of urine, the consequent pressure and sense of urgency may be very uncomfortable. The bottom of the bladder opens into the urethra and is surrounded by a sphincter muscle called the internal urethral sphincter. This muscle is not under our conscious control and is hence termed involuntary. The urethra is a small tube extending from the bladder to outside the body. In females, the urethra is about 4 centimeters in length. The male urethra is longer, about 20 centimeters, as it extends the full length of the penis. In both male and female, the urethra passes through a circular muscle called the external urethral sphincter. This sphincter muscle is under our conscious control and hence called voluntary, and remains closed until the decision is made to urinate. Urination, also called micturition, is coordinated by the micturition reflex. As urine enters the bladder walls are stretched. When the volume reaches 200 to 300 milliliters, the micturition reflex is activated, and the detrusor muscle lining the inside of the bladder begins to contract. This causes us to become aware that we need to urinate, and when an opportunity occurs, we relax our external urethral sphincter, which causes the internal urethral sphincter to also relax, and we urinate. The urinary system's regulatory role in our body is geared towards producing a condition called homeostasis. This word literally means standing still or stationariness. In this context, it is used to describe the proper balance of chemicals and other substances in the body and the harmonious functioning and coordination of all the various bodily processes and organ systems. The kidneys contribute to homeostasis by maintaining proper blood volume and pressure, by regulating the balance of chemicals and other substances in the body's fluids, particularly the crucial amount of sodium, and by regulating the pH, or acidity and alkaline levels of the bloodstream. Cells in the kidneys, called juxtaglomerular cells, regulate blood volume and blood pressure by secreting an enzyme called renin. This initiates a complex series of reactions which results in vasoconstriction, that is, a narrowing of the blood vessels, which in turn increases blood pressure, and an increase of sodium and water reabsorption in the renal tubule that increases blood volume. When blood volume and blood pressure reach normal levels, renin secretion accordingly falls. The kidneys play a crucial role in regulating electrolytes in our bloodstream. For example, if the sodium concentration in our bloodstream becomes too low, the kidneys secrete a hormone called aldosterone, which in turn causes more sodium to be reabsorbed in the renal tubules. If the sodium concentration in our bloodstream is too high, ADH, or antidiuretic hormone, is secreted, with the result that more fluid is reabsorbed in the renal tubule, which has the result of diluting the sodium concentration. The kidneys are also instrumental in maintaining a proper pH balance in the bloodstream. pH is a measure of the activity of hydrogen ions in a solution, and therefore its relative acidity or alkalinity. A value of pH 7 is neutral. A value of less than 7 equals more hydrogen ion activity and therefore more acidity. A value of more than 7 equals less hydrogen ion activity and therefore more alkalinity. A healthy pH level occurs when the ratio of hydrogen ions, which are acidic, to bicarbonate, which is alkaline, in the blood is constant. Our bodies maintain our blood pH level within a very narrow range, 7.38 to 7.42. More than that is too alkaline, less too acidic. When our blood pH level falls below 7.38, our kidneys eliminate hydrogen and retain bicarbonate. If our pH level rises above 7.42, the process is reversed. Urination is one of the most basic and visible processes of the body. But as we've seen, it is far from simple. The organs of the urinary system are constantly filtering our blood to remove the waste products caused by cellular metabolism and other harmful substances, and are largely responsible for maintaining the crucial balance of homeostasis, which is essential for life.